Hi everybody. Today we are going to be creating a pumpkin. And the first thing I'm going to do is fold my paper in half because I want to make sure that I am really using most of the space of my paper. So I folded it almost like I'm going to make a card. The next thing that I'm going to do is right on this line, I am going to add an oval. I'm not going to make it super wide, but I am going to make it fairly tall. So I want to leave room for my stem. So I may make a dot right about here, and then I want it fairly close to the bottom without touching. So I'm going to make another dot there. Then all I'm going to do is I am going to work to connect those dots using a nice round oval shape. If yours ends up being a little bit wider, that's absolutely fine. Don't panic. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a space between the fold and my next line. So I'm going to make another dot and another dot. So you'll see kind of where that curve is a little bit. And I'm going to pull this out and then back. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I like making the dots. I think that it helps me create the space a little bit better. If you don't feel like you need the dots, you should be doing this in pencil first. So if you make a mistake, you can always erase it. And there's another one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the stem because the next few are going to come out here, but they'll still come out wider, but they're going to come out from the stem. So from the outside ovals, I'm going to make kind of an angle in and an angle in. And then I can kind of wiggle my way up, make a jagged line to show, hey, maybe that stem broke off a little bit, wiggle, and back out. So that's showing me where that stem is. Now those angled pieces, I am going to come up, out, and back. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to come up, out, and back. So you'll notice that I have left a space across the entire bottom of my paper. But at this point, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sections to my work. I also want to add a couple of bumps in the background to show, hey, there are sections behind, and all I'm doing is coming from here and curving, and that just helps it make it look like, yes, the pumpkin continues to wrap around that stem. Gives it a little bit more of a three-dimensional look. After I have my pumpkin drawn out, I might add a ground line. Some of you might decide to, instead of doing a ground line, you might decide to do a pattern in your background. So you don't need to do that quite yet. What we're going to focus on first is our pumpkin. One of the awesome parts about this particular assignment is that we're going to be making just some really cool designs. There is an artist named Yayoi Kusama, and she is best known for her polka dots on pumpkins, and she made them like thicker and then thinner smaller at the edges, and it gave this really cool effect. That is something that you could absolutely do in one section, but what I am looking for quite specifically is at least 3 different patterns, and I am requesting 3 because we have one in the middle. These 2 could match, and these 2 could match if you want to stick with that kind of symmetrical theme that this half is the same as this half. However, you can also choose to do 5 different patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 if you fill the background as well. So that really is going to be up to you. I will say that the more patterns you have, the more interesting your artwork is to look at. But I also sometimes really like that symmetry piece where it's the same on both sides. So I am going to start my pattern in here. You would draw yours out with a pencil first, and then you would add color. So I'm going to draw mine out with marker, and then I'm going to add color to mine. Now that I have finished all of my patterns, and you would have drawn these out with pencil, you have a couple of different choices. One of the things that you could do is you could take a thin marker and you could trace over all of this, or a Sharpie, and so that all of your lines stand out really nicely. If you're using a Sharpie, please make sure that you put a piece of paper underneath your artwork so it doesn't bleed through. It's to protect your table and your desk. If you are choosing to use a skinny marker, it's much less likely to bleed through. You could choose to use an orange marker or a black marker, or frankly, whatever color you really want. It's fine if these are different colors. Another thing that you can choose is after you have traced all of this, if you have used Sharpie, you can use regular marker to color this in. However, one of the things that I would really recommend is that you experiment a little bit with color blending. So what I am going to show you is how we can use a really simple material to create a more three-dimensional artwork. So if you have a variety of oranges, so I have a regular orange, a yellow orange, as well as a red orange, this will work. However, if you don't, you can also just use your orange, a yellow, and a red, and you can actually get almost the same exact effect. So because I know that not everybody has access to all of those colors, I am simply going to be using orange, yellow, and red for my work. I am going to start by coloring in the entire pumpkin with my orange. Once I am finished coloring with my orange, a couple of things that I want you to notice are that I did not press super hard when I was coloring, because otherwise my next layers of colors, you're not going to notice them nearly as much. I tend to like to start with the shadows first. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that our light source is kind of up in here. So the top part of our pumpkin is going to be lighter. The bottom part of our pumpkin is going to be darker. So there's going to be a little bit of a shadow. So instead of adding black, which we know will make it darker, you can also add just a color that is darker. So if you have a red orange, you can use that if you want. You can also use a red if you don't have a red orange. So all I'm going to do, and again, I'm going to start this fairly lightly because I don't want it to all of a sudden be red. I still want to keep that kind of orange color. But I'm going to start just by coloring over that orange a little bit. As I get higher up on the pumpkin, I'm going to start pressing lighter and lighter, except for where these two lines kind of come together, because there would be a bit more of a shadow. So I'm going to almost bring that pretty close to the top, not quite. And then I just kind of fade it out. So one thing I want you to notice is that you don't see just a line of red. It fades. It's darker down in here, and then it gets lighter. So we're adding some shading or value, which is how light or dark a color is. to our work to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. So again, the part where those ridges of the pumpkin would be, I'm pulling that red up a little bit more. And I'm not pressing firmly. I am pressing fairly lightly because I don't want it to get too crazy. I don't want to see just a stripe of red because that would make it look a little bit silly and it wouldn't look as accurate. So on this one, I'm getting down in here at the bottom and fading as I go up. So I'm just not pressing nearly as hard, barely touching the crayon. And you'll notice in the video, you can't really fully tell where I have colored. You can just tell, you can tell more down here than you can on the sides, but it's still adding a nice darkness to my orange, which gives it kind of that nice shadow. In here, I'm gonna keep going. So I'm gonna keep going with my red, and then I will check back once I am all done. Once I am finished with my red, so the value down towards the base, which gives it a little bit of a shadow, so it looks like it's curling towards us a little bit, what I am now going to do is I'm going to add some highlights around the top. And so I'm going to use yellow to brighten up that orange a bit. And so I'm just going to kind of go around. I tend to color in a circular motion for this. Don't know why, I just do. And I'm just adding some yellow towards the top to say, hey, it's lighter up here. That's where the sun or the light is shining. And again, I might pull it down on this one on the sides a little bit more, just because that one is right in the front. And so it would be more shiny in this general area. And then in these, I'm just gonna hit the tops of those bumps where the pumpkin's ridges are, and right here I am pulling it down to where that red is a little bit. I'm gonna go all the way around, and even these bumps in the background a little bit, I'm gonna add just a little bit of yellow to brighten that up. Now, at this point, it looks pretty good. What I might want to do though is go in with my orange again and kind of tone down that red and go over just that middle section to make it a little bit darker, a little bit more orangey. And if you think that that will help, and I'm also filling in any white spaces that I might have missed, so it just makes it fill in a little bit more, layering those colors. It will kind of tone them down so they won't be quite as intense because you're adding that orange back in. But again, I am not pressing super hard because I don't want to color over all of my hard work and cover it up. I still want the yellow part to look brighter and the red part to look a bit darker. Okay, so adding value to your artwork can make it a lot more interesting to look at. Another thing that you can choose to do would be in here, if you wanted to color some of these sections black, you could have already, or if you are using a Sharpie, as long as you have not pressed really hard with your crayon, you can actually go in and color right over it. If you have pressed really hard, the wax of the crayon is really going to make it hard for that Sharpie to color over it. It will kind of resist, kind of like a watercolor resist when we paint over a waxy crayon. It will do the same thing. So it's not the best habit to go in and color on top of crayon, but if that's something that you are now noticing, like, hey, I'd love for that to be darker, you could use a Sharpie over it. You could also, frankly, just use a black crayon and press firmly and fill that in nice and neat if there are parts of your design that you want to color in, so that you just have a little bit more contrast between the orange of your pumpkin and the black or whatever color of your design. Personally, I kind of like how the black looks, how it just has this really just nice dark with the lighter value changes above. So once we have this done, we're going to work on our stem. Our stem, we are going to color the entire thing brown lightly. And again, we're going to add value to this by simply pressing more firmly. We're not going to use a separate color. So I'm going to show that in here, I'm going to press a bit more firmly to get that shadow going, because that's where it goes down towards the pumpkin. And also I can add kind of some dark areas to add some texture if I want to, and just to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. So I have darker areas and lighter areas to show a change in value on my pumpkin. That's one of those vocabulary words that we're working on with this assignment, is pattern, with our different patterns that we've created, and value by how we are adding color. At this point, your background is going to be a choice. If you want to create a cool pattern in the whole background, that's absolutely fine. If you want to create a ground line and color the ground, add some extra details around it, that is fine as well. One of the things that I like to have people consider is that since our pumpkin is a warm color, because we use those yellows, oranges, and reds on it, you might want to consider having your background be a cool color, so with blues, greens, and violets, because that'll make the warmth of the pumpkin really pop forward. But again, that is a choice. So you could add some cool designs or create a background for your pumpkin. I am not going to create my background so that you have a bit more freedom on what you choose to do, but I do expect you to have one. And I hope you enjoyed following along. I can't wait to see what you create, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.